DJ Batboi with the Sad Sack Sack of Sads right here on 90.3 The Core. I'm sitting down with Clipping, an experimental hip-hop group out of LA. Would you guys like to introduce yourself and let us know, what you do in the band?
Sure. I'm Bill. This is William Hutson. I am one of the two guys that works on the beat.
I am Jonathan Snipes. I'm the other of the two guys who works on the beats.
And I'm David Diggs, and I write and say words.
That's a pretty apt description. So you guys have a new album out. It's There Existed an Addiction to Blood. It's kind of your own take on the horrorcore subgenre. A lot of really cool influences going on there. How's the reception to the album at these shows felt so far?
Pretty good. I mean, the album's not technically out yet, although a lot of people, if you pre-ordered it through Sub Pop, then you can stream it already. So it seems like people have. We're only playing a few songs from the album, mostly because I have to learn them before we play them. And, but yeah, it is wild to me how many people seem to know the words as well as, if not better than I do, which is stressful, but it's good. It's a good stress. And I don't know. It's been fun. I think we like this music so much, so it's always fun to play things that you like.
Yeah, no, totally. So what was the process of writing this album like? When I ran into John at the show the other day, he was saying that this album took like a good 5 or 6 years to develop.
Less than that.
I think what he probably meant, this is Bill, what he probably meant by that was that the song Club Down was actually, we wrote and recorded that in, I think, March of 2014. We wrote it in between turning in our first Sub Pop album and it coming out. Mm-hmm. And we played it once, but then we decided that we liked it so much and we liked the direction it was going, that we wanted to build a whole album sort of around the sound of that, or at least make an album that we thought that song fit in specifically. And so then over the next, what is that? 5 years? 6 years?
5 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I just said the date. So 5 years.
Yeah.
So that's 5 years. Filled in and made other songs that we thought would maybe go with that song, Club Down.
Also, the one time we played that song was at a concert where they neglected to turn on the PA for the audience, so we were pretty sure that it wasn't leaked.
Yeah, the stage monitors were on, and we thought we were
really nailing this show until I dropped down into the audience to do some crowd work and realized it was just a spoken word set.
Well, you got a good enough flow that can work out pretty well.
I don't know.
I like it. So this album has a lot of really cool influences on it. There's a lot from the horrorcore scene and a lot specifically from horror film and writing. I know in the press release I got, Ganja and Hess was cited there. A lot of different independent black horror in there. What are some of the other major horror influences, film, books, music on this album?
I mean, Nothing is Safe is very specifically an inversion of the story of John Carpenter's film Assault on Precinct 13.
And that,
what else?
that beat before I wrote to it was just called Carpenter for a long time. It was always intended to do something Carpenter-esque with that.
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of what I was getting at, because listening to the album, even before I saw that you guys specifically cited Carpenter, I was like, oh, this is the score from Halloween.
What the Lachette song's on this?
Yeah,
correct.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Run for Your Life.
Run for Your Life is the most direct sort of Memphis horrorcore homage we did on the thing, and we got Lachette to be on it so that everybody would know that.
Yeah.
And because she's great.
Yeah, I mean, legendary 3-6 Mafia, sort of peripheral 3-6 Mafia member, Hypnotized Mind camp.
Yeah, sometimes we write ourselves into these corners where we have these really specific ideas that require a feature that we don't know if we're going to be able to get. So I wrote this song about a guy running away from Lachette, basically. And
we're like, if we can't get her to rap on it, I guess we don't put it out.
Oh, I'm glad that worked out. That song is awesome.
Yeah, we were really glad she wanted to do it.
Yeah, is that how you guys generally approach doing features in your track? You write a track with a feature in mind, or is it, how does something like that come together?
Almost always. I mean, there have been a couple of exceptions to that where like something, someone wanted to work with us and it just fell into our lap. But I would say almost all of our features are very specifically designed for the feature who's on it. I mean, certainly the one for Benny the Butcher, the one for the Chat, on the previous album, the one for Gangsta Boo, the one for King T, those were all very, very specifically designed for those rappers. Yeah, we made those beats knowing that those rappers were gonna work on those songs with us.
Yeah, so when you do have a feature come on, is David writing their verses for the song, or is it like a collaborative thing, or they come in and do it?
Oh, they write whatever they
write everything that they say. We try to. That's the reason we do this, because this band has this really specific way that it works. So we need to create a framework for an artist that we love to do the thing that they do. So we're trying not to hinder them from the stuff that we think they would enjoy doing. But what's been really fascinating about working with folks is like nobody, people talk about our music as like weird or difficult or whatever sometimes, but if you approach any other musician with it, any other rapper, they're always like, yeah, I get it. We told LaChat the idea and she was like, great, yep.
Yeah,
I mean, no one back in the day, like
none of these other rappers has ever said that's a weird ass beat, that's a weird ass idea. Benny's literal words were, I sent him the beat and he was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna smoke that. And he did.
Yeah.
Oh hell yes. Yeah, so another question about the album. So you end it on this specific avant-garde piece, Piano Burning. I wanted to kind of see why you landed on that specifically to include on this album, and like what the piece kind of means to you.
Well, we sort of made it a rule that we try to end albums on performances of process music or contemporary classical music. Like sometimes Mid-City ends in a reference to Steve Reich, though not an actual performance of a Steve Reich piece.
Because there was no way we were going to pay the publishing on one of our very first album. We did not think anyone was going to like our band to begin with, so we were just going to blow a bunch of money on that. But
and then CLPPNG ends with a performance of a John Cage piece from the 50s, and so we had a lot of ideas tossing around ways to end this record, and the piano burning, I mean, we love Annie Lockwood, and piano burning felt like a thing we could accomplish, and it felt thematically appropriate to horror, and I think there's a nice little symmetry to the record that maybe we didn't consider or intend. That the very first thing you hear in the first song after the intro is a one piano note and nothing is safe, and then the very last thing you hear is that piano burning. And I've seen people write on the internet that they imagine that that's the piano we burned,
right? Yeah.
which is not true.
Yeah. I mean, I think we performing that piece, I think we've also we sort of maybe unfairly cast it as like a more like frightening or horror related, in the composer, in Annie Lockwood's mind, burning the piano is not at all like an aggressive act towards pianos, or it's not a spooky thing, I don't think, but we've looking for some experimental work to perform for the end of our album, since our album was so thematically specific. The idea of ending in a fire was really just narratively such a trope in horror, where I think it's such a common thing that a horror movie ends in a fire. A haunted house movies always end in burning the house down or something like that. That even though the piece itself is not supposed to be horror themed, it worked for us for that reason. There's something inherently spooky in it when we recontextualize it this way.
Yeah, I could definitely say when I first got my hands on the album and I was driving home, I got right to my house as Piano Burning came on, and I just had this smile across my face because it's just a nice cathartic ending to the album, hearing the strings snap and stuff like that. Do you guys?
Part of me also feels like if you listen to that song by itself, like you could play it at Christmas time instead of watching, or like while you're watching the Yule Log on your TV.
Yeah, it's the avant-garde Yule Log.
We have talked about releasing the video footage of that as an avant-garde Yule Log.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be amazing. You think you're gonna perform it live?
I don't think anyone will ever let us do that.
I can't imagine the amount of paperwork we'd have to fill out to be allowed to perform that live anywhere, at least in the United States.
Other than Burning Man.
Yeah. Where there would be no paperwork involved. We can just do it.
You can do it at Burning Man. But
that's the least clipping event. You'll never get the band clipping attending such a thing.
So I want to talk a little bit about film scores, because there's definitely like being that this album is a lot of influences from like John Carpenter horror scores. I was excited to find out that both John and Bill have worked on scores for film and TV, particularly like Room 237. Have you guys like ever thought about, scoring like a real horror movie, or like maybe writing something like that?
I mean, damn, shots fired, bro.
I mean,
Jonathan has scored several real horror movies.
Oh, I didn't. I only heard people only cite Room 237. I'm losing my horror nerd cred here.
You just take the jobs that come to you.
Look, you're on the soundtrack to Snakes on a Plane, one of my favorite horror movies.
There you go.
That's also true. I think I was on the digital portion of the enhanced CD.
Yeah,
it's on the plane. So.
Your song is in the end credits, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's
a 30-second edit of my song. It's the third end credit song. We've never talked about like doing a horror score as clipping.
Yeah, I think that's more what I was going towards.
Yeah. No, we knew that.
No, we're just taking shots at Jonathan.
Yeah, we've not really talked about that, and we actually don't know what it means for clipping to make a purely instrumental piece of music, because clipping is definitely the three of us, and when Bill and I make purely instrumental music, it doesn't necessarily fall under the clipping umbrella, even if there are interludes or things that we've made on clipping albums. It always feels like it's in service of making rap songs. But I mean, I'd be open to the idea.
Yeah, and the three of us have worked together on other like soundtrack stuff that also doesn't fall under the clip,
Isn't clipping, but still, there are many songs that the three of us wrote, just the three of us, that are not clipping songs that ended up on a sitcom that nobody watched.
I think I've heard of that sitcom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
if you want to tell your listeners to go listen to The Mayor.
Oh, definitely.
Want you to listen to it, but those songs bang.
Yeah, no, it was such a brilliant little flash in the pan. I'm sad that didn't last longer.
Turns out ABC didn't like rapping or politics.
Oh no, ABC really?
In their primetime sitcoms, but that's okay.
20 or so songs that most of which we're very proud of. We went back and listened to some of them that were for the episodes after we knew we were canceled. And Jonathan and I were like, well, we kind of vote those ones in. There's really only one that we were like, yeah, it was nice.
Yeah. But those episodes never even aired.
Yeah, they weren't even on TV, so it doesn't matter.
On Spotify, but
you definitely thought this was an interview about the mayor, right?
Oh yeah, no, totally. Are we gonna see a release of those unreleased songs?
Yeah.
I think all the songs are out.
They're all on Spotify and Apple Music. I know that.
Yeah, they're on Spotify and Apple Music, and you'd never know that unless you went looking for them specifically, because no one involved in that TV show ever wanted to tell anyone that those songs were available anywhere to hear.
But what's wild about that is how hard everybody worked on the menu. Like Brandon, the whole cast had to come in and re-record these songs that I wrote that were not easy songs. You know, I mean, it was really after full days of shooting. It was crazy.
The only promotion that those songs ever got was our social media accounts, where we told everyone we were proud of these and we wanted everyone to hear them. And then the actors themselves would like tweet about them. But
they made like 2 promo videos. Like I think maybe Entertainment Weekly posted once.
Oh really? Oh, I remember that one. Yeah, that was pleasant.
Yeah. Anyway, I would love to have a conversation with somebody who wants to have clippings go on horror movies. You know,
it would be fun to figure out what that is.
Yeah, no, that would be exciting, and I'm definitely gonna spam like 9 links at the bottom of this interview for it's the mayor interview. That's what's gonna be.
Yeah.
So kind of in that vein, talking about film stuff like that. Being that we're getting into the spooky season, and by the time I get this edited, it'll probably be, just a little closer to Halloween. So I want to ask, like, what is the trashiest horror film that you guys would consider your favorite?
Trashiest horror film that I consider a favorite.
I'm not talking like, more like the highfalutin, like, Midsommar, Hereditary, Exorcist. I'm talking like Jason X. Like just the fun thing that is your thing to put on.
Wait, hold on.
All of us love Jason X.
I don't know if any of us would consider that trashy. So we were
literally defending Jason X to our friend Terrence, who played horror film scores before our sets at the show last night, and he was trying to argue that Jason X was not the best Friday the 13th movie, which it clearly is. I have read the novelization of Jason X and the 4 sequels that were never filmed that were just novel sequels to Jason X that are fantastic.
Wait,
I want those to be made in the movie.
There's book sequels to Jason X?
There are book sequels to Jason X, yeah. So he gets launched out of the airlock at the end of Jason X and floats through space for 1,000 years and then crash lands on a prison planet where he just murders everyone on the prison planet and then he gets launched back into space. They're so fun.
Wait, so that is literally Alien 3, but with Jason instead of a xenomorph.
Pretty much, yes, exactly. Like, effectively Alien 3, yeah, but with Jason.
I love that so much.
Yeah, the first 2 are written by Pat Cadigan, who's like a super, brilliant and respected, legit sci-fi writer, usually credited with sort of co-inventing cyberpunk with like William Gibson and Bruce Sterling. She's like the third name people mention with those other 2 as like the original cyberpunk writers.
Oh wow, that's fantastic. I did not know there was just so much going into this movie. That's my goofy Halloween watch.
What is the trashiest? Like trashiest, because cause there's like little seedy, just like unpleasant, like really like something. There's some really just sort of cruel, especially like Euro trash that like
I'm stumping myself on this question too. Let's do 2 versions of trashy. We'll do what's your favorite just ridiculous camp one and your favorite exploitation horror.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think of. I just watched In the Folds of the Flesh.
I've never heard of that
movie. It's nuts. There is so much. It has like everything awful and uncomfortable in it. There's so much awful stuff with animals.
Oh boy.
Okay.
Like mistreated vultures who live in a cage on these people's property that they feed the bodies to, and there's just an unbelievable amounts of incest and Holocaust flashbacks.
Oh geez.
And it's really a mind. The Folds of the Flesh, that's a good one.
Speaking of, so this might be just on, like, it was actually kind of like considered highbrow at the time, but is so much weirder and more bananas than anyone remembers or gives it credit for. It's the Amityville Horror 2 from the early 80s.
I haven't seen that.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, everyone should watch it. For a mainstream American movie made in the maybe 79 or 80, there is a tremendous amount of really uncomfortable teenage incest. That it seems like that was the idea that they had that the haunting was manifesting as two teenage brother and sister having sex a lot. It's really unbearable. But the rest of the movie, the tone does not fit how horrifying that premise is. It thinks it's just a nice little spooky movie, and then it's real stuff, and it's
Wow.
That one's weird. I recommend it to everyone.
Okay, I'm adding that to my list.
It's just uncomfortable. And it's just it's about a really abusive father, but I think it treats it as if it's kind of funny, and it's not at all.
Yeah, having read about the actual Amityville murders, there is no room for fun in any of that. Besides maybe that they all have Staten Island accents.
Yes, that is for sure true in this one.
So here at the core, New Brunswick has this really big basement scene with DIY shows, stuff like that. So I like to do in my interviews a little local bands ask segment. So I had Max from this noise group Ultra Deluxe reach out to me, and they wanted to know what some essential albums, comic books, or movies that were really big and inspiring Splendor and Misery from a story or conceptual standpoint.
Splendor and Misery? Well,
Event Horizon. The N.K. Jamison's Inheritance trilogy, is there characters from that referenced on that record?
The title is...
The title is a reference to a Samuel Delany, an unfinished, unpublished Samuel Delany novel. There's Aramount contains references to about 20 science fiction novels.
There's the from John Harrison in there, and a lot of Ursula Le Guin.
Yeah, Joanna Russ.
Is there any in
so Laird Barron referenced in there?
It's kind of it's a weird sort of Marvel universe of unrelated sci-fi in a weird way. The weird conceit of that album is us pretending all of these influential writers, people who are highly influential on us, that all of their stories exist in the same universe, and could be something that this protagonist, Cargo number 2331, was familiar with, those events or those practices. So it's as long as the reference was from a piece of science fiction that one of us really liked, it was fair game to put on the record.
Well, that's a cool way to approach it. Just the hodgepodge of your influences.
That's how we worked on the record in general too, because we kind of, as we were sketching out the story, we all kind of had different ideas of what was actually happening, and we'd misremember conversations or sort of assume that things were true or not. And I think we still probably have three pretty different readings of exactly what's happening on that record, and we decided that all of those could be true at the same time, right? A record is intended to be a primary source, not a telling of a story, right? It's supposed to be the fragments and the documents and the images and the memories that you construct a narrative from, and that the three of us have each constructed slightly different narratives out of it is they're all valid and they're all true.
And it's really fun to hear other people's narratives and to see people making artwork about it and all of that.
Yeah, I hear, not directly from Splendor and Misery, but The Deep is getting its own novelization, right?
Yeah. That's out within a month. Really soon, but within a month.
Yeah, it comes out. Yeah, novelization is a weird word. Is that right? There's not a better word for it, but it's a complete novel that exists totally on its own, that is slightly inspired by our 5-minute song, but it's a 90-page novella. Mostly, largely from the imagination of its author, River Solomon, who wrote this wonderful book.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. Like I'm, hearing that song, like it's such a neat, neat's probably not the right word, but it's like a very well thought out world built in just 5 minutes there. So I'm excited to see where another author can run with that.
Yeah, it's good. I'm excited for people to read it, and yeah, it's a real good time. Rivers did their thing.
Okay, so I guess we'll move just the last question of the night. I'm trying to think. It's always weird to word this. I like to throw in one last question here because I'm DJ Batboi over here at the core, and that's because all of us here at the station are students or community members. So I'm actually a bat biologist. I work with the state researching bats and working with them hands-on. So I love asking.
That's awesome. That's so cool. When you said that at the beginning, we all laughed, and I was trying to come up with ways to make fun of you about it, and this is way cooler.
Yeah, so feel free to make fun of that, because my last question is, what are your guys' favorite bats? Do you have a favorite bat, a favorite bat related story, something with that? Just bats, go.
That's a wild question. But an ex of mine was from Hobbs, New Mexico, and so one time when I was out there visiting her, we drove down to Carlsbad Caverns and sat and watched the bats spiral out of the cavern at sunset, which is just a very cool thing in my memory. I still remember seeing this huge cloud, cyclone of bats coming up out of these caves.
A friend of mine, an incredible experimental musician who used to be based in San Francisco, he's moved some rural area sort of near San Francisco, named Jim Haynes, did a music performance. If I hope I'm describing it correctly. He had a bat detector in his pocket. So it's a microphone and a processor and a speaker all in a little box that pitches down bat echolocation. I know you know.
Yeah, that's
exactly what I'm talking about.
The work I do specifically is with bat acoustics.
But it was this really magical performance where it just sounded like these completely alien sounds were coming from his pockets, because he was clinking little objects in front of the microphone, and then the speaker was producing pitched down interpolations of them, of the sounds he was making. So it was just he was just fiddling around in his pockets, and it was so incredibly mysterious. I had no idea what this was, and later he explained that they're bat detectors. And Jonathan and I actually bought a bat detector, hoping to do something with it, and never quite figured out how to use it for musical purposes. But one of the first things we did when we signed to Sub Pop Records with our advance was we made Sub Pop. The things we made Sub Pop buy us were a chime tree and a bat detector.
I had an experience, 14 years ago, 15 years ago. I was touring a play in Poland, and we all decided to go on an off day in Lublin. We all decided to go to a concentration camp, to Majdanek to visit, which was a sort of obviously a sobering and frightening and moving experience. And on our long walk, we had missed the last bus out of it or something, and the sun was setting slowly, and we had this very long walk back into town, this long dirt road leading out of the camp. And as the sun was setting, a seemingly endless flock of bats, swarm of bats, a stream of bats. It was like a river of bats over our heads, incredibly low, that completely darkened the sky on our walk out of this concentration camp. And I still remember the sound of all of their wings sort of at once. And that was kind of the moment that was the sort of emotional straw that broke my back at that point, after touring the concentration camp. And that's my immediate association in the world. I've had other associations with bats.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It was a new one.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks for, I always get such great stories out of that weird question.
Really good question. Yeah.
Well, so thank you guys for sitting down with me.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
By the Christians it is written that in the Black Meridian age there exists an addiction to blood.
Drink it up. 50 years about enough. Time to come back. They wanna call the bluff. Okay then, time to come back. What up? Hail King Huey, do it for fluid, you knew it was moving forever.